Welcome back. And so even the very first of creation elements was light. Let there be light. So what can we do without electricity? But let's go to the underserved areas where, according to reports, there's only 41% access rate. And by implication, that means that in those rural areas, they may be getting access to only 12 hours or less of electricity per day. But it appears that the new leadership of the Rural Electrification Agency is poised to change that narrative. Now, let's talk to the man himself as we welcome here to our Lagos studio, Mr. Abba Aliyu. He's the Managing Director, Rural Electrification Agency, who joins us right here in our Lagos studio. Good morning and welcome to the Morning Brief on Channels Television.
Good morning and thank you for having me.
And I'm sure you've heard this a lot in recent times. Congratulations on your appointment.
Thank you so much. Yes.
So the figures are there as I've outlined. So what is your strategy as you assume leadership, to change this narrative? Help us understand your action plan.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. The clear mandate of Rural Electrification Agency is to just two things. One, create electricity access for communities that are without the access. And in context, Nigeria has the highest number of people that are without electricity access. The second mandate is to create reliability for the underserved. So these areas are areas that they have the access, but the reliability is very low. So these are the two key mandates. And my action points are just 5 key areas. One is to clearly face this mandate with a lot of rigor. We undertake to electrify 25 million Nigerians in just 3 years. And we have different programs that we articulated to achieve that, one of which is the biggest public sector funded project funded by the World Bank to electrify 17.5 million Nigerians. And the second one is through the Rural Electrification Fund project that we created called eHeart, energizing health, education, agriculture, rural communities, and incentivizing electric mobilities in rural communities. So these are the programs that we designed purposely to electrify these 25 million Nigerians. The second aspect of it is to create data, because electrifying these communities without data is quite challenging. And the recent Electrification Act that was signed by Mr. President had mandated Rural Electrification Agency to be the custodian of the National Electrification Strategy and Implementation Plan. And we have already started working on that. The plan is nothing other than mapping the entire country to determine where are the so-called unelectrified communities, where are the communities that are underserved, and where are the communities that are getting much electricity. So the plan is going to be a bottom-up approach, going to all the communities, determining their level of consumption, determining whether they have the access or not, determining what is the most efficient means of providing them with this electricity. Should it be a renewable source of generation, or should we extend the grid? Because if the community is very close to the grid, should we extend the grid to serve these communities? So we will aggregate all these plans for these communities to local government level, to state level, and aggregating it to have a national electrification plan, which would give you the total number of communities that are without the electricity, total number of the underserved, what is the level of consumption of these communities, what is the best means, what we call the least costs of electrifying these communities. And at the same time, this plan will tell you, if you see the community, will tell you how many households are in these communities, what is the number of houses in the communities, what is the nature of occupation, what is the total number of people within the communities. So this is a plan that we have already started working on. If you are following the news, you will see that Rural Electrification Agency has been engaging state-by-state roundtable. Just last week, we had with the Jigawa State government, where we provided them with this data of Jigawa in front of the executive governor. We showed them that there are opportunities of about 500 mini grids that can electrify more than 1 million indigenous of Jigawa State. And where these mini grids potentials are, and all the socio-economic variables around these communities that require this mini grid. So that's the second aspect of it. The third aspect of it is for us to continue to support critical sectors of the Nigerian economy. We have been intervening in education, in health and agriculture. Just recently, it's been on the news, I've been saying it, that we recently completed intervention in 7 universities and 2 teaching hospitals, where we provided them with a hybrid mini grid that would provide these universities 24/7 reliable, cost-effective electricity. One, for example, is in the University of Maiduguri, where we deployed 12 megawatt capacity powering the university and the teaching hospital, and has the potential to even power the only water treatment plant within the Maiduguri metropolitan. So these are kind of intervention. And we completed 7 universities and 2 teaching hospitals, and we have now started a new line of 8 universities and 1 teaching hospital. And the commissioning of the new phase would start as early as April this year. So this is the intervention. Then we also intervene in the health sectors, where we deploy 100 containerized 50 kilowatt peak mini grid at various health institutions, some of them, 2 of them here in Lagos. So we're intervening in health, in education and in agriculture. In fact, the first event I presided as the confirmed MD of Rural Electrification Agency is signing 23 agreements with private sector to deploy hybrid mini grid in 23 agricultural clusters. We used our mapping, geospatial mapping, to identify agricultural hubs that require this mini grid to enhance productivity, to also give the farmers opportunity to farm all year round, and at the same time also reduce post-harvest losses, which is the greatest challenge affecting the Nigerians' food security. So this is the third point.
I know you have a lot to say, Mr. Ali, and it's brilliant, some of the outlines you put out and reeled out. But I wanted to go back a little bit. You were in a appointed position, because this is important to whatever plan you have. You were in a appointed position, I think, from March last year up to January, where you were appointed as substantive for the next 4 years. And one of the reasons your predecessor were kicked out was allegations of fraud. So I'm wondering, what are you putting in place as an insulator to make sure that that doesn't happen under your leadership? Because all of these plans can be fantastic, and then the next thing we hear, oh, God forbid, Mr. Ali has embezzled money or whatever. No, that's not. I'm just, you understand my context.
Exactly.
Because somebody lost his job and you had to be put in because the person was not doing his job. Though it's an allegation of fraud and all of that. And all of these plans are great. So what are you doing to curb the corruption or alleged corruption within your agency?
Yeah, so very good question. Just also as a context, before my appointment, I was heading the World Bank and African Development Bank Project Management Unit, whereby it's a project management unit with defined process and well-enshrined transparency and accountability system. And when the current Honorable Minister of Power nominated me to even act in that capacity, he only knows of me. He has never seen me in person. But part of the reason I think why he nominated me, it's because of that transparency and accountability that imbibed in the project management unit that I was running at that particular time. So it is, and his expectation is to bring that transparency and accountability to the mainstream of Rural Electrification Agency. And this is something that had already started. If you look at it, one of the first thing we did is, for the first time in the history of Rural Electrification Agency, to publish the capital project implementation plan of the agency, whereby the entire amount of money that was allocated to the agency in 2023 and how we spent that money was published. It's now in the public domain. And this is my own way of creating accountability, opening the agency to the general public, to even the journalists, to hold us accountable and see that, yes, we are doing the right thing. That is one. The second aspect of it is also leveraging on data to be able to communicate and also establish what we are doing. Currently, even our technical standard has been improved. Even if we install a solar street light, which oftentimes because we installed many of them, it's very difficult to account for it. But now we have data loggers that we can install on this solar street light, that if you come to our office, you can communicate, you can see. If we say we install 2,000 solar street light, you can see them. So using technology also to open things up. And at the same time, it's also improving our internal process. We just engage with the support of the World Bank. We engage Delbach, a consulting company, and is redesigning the operational framework of the Rural Electrification Agency to make sure that there's check-in balances and each and every segregation of duties, and make sure that we strengthen our internal audit system within the agency to create financial accountability.
Yeah, the reason I ask, because I'm looking at the budget for 2025, this is not passed. You have an exposure of over £500 million.
Yes.
That's a lot of money.
To show you that is also to show you a confidence that the current leadership has in REA.
$500 billion, I must say, I must apologize.
Yes, half a trillion, yes.
Over.
And that is even just a bit of it. You have not even factored the $750 million that we are managing. This $500 billion is just the capital part of it. We have about 4 different sources of funding. And why we even get the $500 billion in capital budget is because the budget office, normally before any budget cycle, they do an assessment of federal government agencies based on their ability to spend the money, based on their intervention, and they rate those agencies, and that would determine how much that agency will get. And we got the feedback that, based on our engagement with the budget office, that we have been rated as grade A agency, and that is why we get a lot of this funding. If you also check within the budget, you will see a new initiative of Mr. President, which was presented by Honorable Minister of Power, that we call the National Public Sector Solarization Initiative, a new concept that is designed to reduce cost of governance. 100 billion has been allocated for it, and what we are going to use that funding for is to solarize the entire public institutions. And oftentimes budget is being allocated, but we don't go and analyze the figures of that budget implementation. The current leadership did that analysis and see how much public sector institutions are spending in the procurement of diesel, in buying and repairs of generators. And to address that, that funding is being provided for us to now solarize this institution. And that amount of expenditure in our national budget meant for diesel purchase and generator purchase and repairs can be channeled to other relevant sectors of the Nigerian economy, thereby reducing cost of governance, reducing expenditure, and getting more resources for more development intervention.
I'm just wondering why a rural electrification agency has not transited to other alternative forms of energy. Well, your administrative needs are well noted. But before we leave the matter of corruption, you've talked about internal audit and how that is important to ensure transparency at your agency. But what about external audit? Because a certain director of the agency is being tried, and if you look at some of the details, it is a partnership with consultants to the agency, to get some forms of kickbacks. So how are you ensuring, or is the government itself ensuring external audit, such that it deters directors or members of the agency from engaging in kickbacks from contractors to the agency?
Oh, very good question. Even this external audit, for example, as at now, the 2024 external audit has been done, has been completed. We are about to sign it. So we have external auditors that also do our review of our books, which we are mandated to send it to the Public Accounts Committee of the National Assembly. Why we're strengthening the internal audit is because it's preventative. Right, the external audit is normally at the end of the year, then look back, review the books, but the internal audit looked at the operation day in, day out, thereby reducing the cost and preventing any means of fraud taking place within the agency. And that is why I'm strengthening the internal audit more. But we also have the external audit concept that is being done year in, year out in REA.
Now, listening to you talk about your action plan, you've talked a lot about mini-grid and dependence on instruments from the World Bank. But in the long term, what is the plan for sustainability of these equipment, these resources for dependence on power supply? And this is important because we keep talking about power grid collapses and how it costs so much to maintain the national grid. So in the long term, these instruments for the supply of power at the rural level, what is the plan to ensure maintenance of them such that they serve in the long term?
The key sustainability framework that we adopt is building our infrastructure around the private sector. That is a key. And that is why if you see what REA now is doing is reversing more from issuing a contract to more around public-private partnership. So bringing the public sector, de-risking the sector for the private sector, for them to now bring in their money and deploying the infrastructure. So when you have the private sector, if you are in the private sector and you borrow money and you deploy an renewable infrastructure or you deploy a mini grid, you will make sure that that mini grid is operational because you need to get revenue from that mini grid to be able to pay your debt and even make some return for yourself. So building the first level of sustainability for us is building it around the private sector, not to just get a contract, get a contractor, deploy mini grid, finish it and leave. No, we get the private sector to bring in their funding and we risk the sector through capital grants and we get that infrastructure being deployed. That is one. The second aspect of it is most often are things that have been ignored, which are very essential to the sustainability of whatever infrastructure we deploy. So take, for example, land matters. Land matters because we require land to deploy our solar photovoltaic panels. It is very important to make sure that there is no issue of land dispute in that regard. So we only subsidize or provide capital subsidy to private sector that has a land with genuine certificate of occupancy. That is one of our concerned strategy that we adopt. The third is also community engagement. In wherever we deployed our resources, we create what we call the Renewable Electricity Users Cooperation, reuse. And this is also our own way of creating job opportunities, at the same time also getting the community to own the mini grids. In many areas we deploy mini grids. If you go try to attempt to tamper with that infrastructure, and you will see what the community will do to you. And that is sustainability for us.
Because of want of time, I want us to do something. Today is February the 11th. Your ideas are brilliant, but implementation is another kettle of fish. As I look at the budget, besides the HQ of your ministry, the big ministry, the next biggest expenditure is the rural electrification. Yes. That means if you fail, Mr. Aliyu, the power ministry has failed.
Yes. So
maybe we'll come back here next year, God willing, if we come back here to discuss this. I want us to give us a 1-year projection of what you intend to achieve. I know you have all this blueprint, but maybe in 1 minute. Where are we now in terms of rural electrification, right now, in terms of percentage? And maybe you can point out a few places in terms of the agro distribution. And where should we be on February the 11th? 2026. So we can hold you to account. We're putting you on record now.
Yes. In fact, it shouldn't even be 1 year. It should be in the next 6 months. Engage me in 6 months.
Okay.
It should be on record.
Deal.
Engage me in 6 months. Let me return 6 months
so
from
tell us
now.
Where we are and where we're going.
I will tell you that before the next 6 months, we would at least commission 60 mini-grids. 60 mini-grids in this. I will also in the next 6 months, I will tell you that I have started process of deploying interconnected mini-grids, 40 interconnected mini-grids, for us to create reliability. I will also come here and tell you that I have started a process of deploying mini-grids in additional 5 universities. And I would tell you also that in the next 6 months that I have completed at least 2, minimum 2, of the 8 mini-grids that I'm deploying in the 8 universities and 1 teaching hospitals. I may do much more than the 2, but I'm telling you minimum of 2. And I will also tell you that I've started another 5 interconnected mini-grids. I will also tell you that in the next 6 months that I have started solarizing the public sectors, right? We're looking at maybe some key government parastatal in Abuja and maybe outside the Abuja. I will tell you those that I have already started. And in 1 year, also be on record, I will complete the 8 universities and 1 teaching hospital. I will complete the interconnected mini-grids.
For those, for 8 universities, you mean? For
the 8 universities and 1 teaching hospital, I'll complete it.
Is UCH part of it? Is UCH?
So the UCH is part of the 5 that we are looking at starting. We are looking at starting in the Lagos University. The Minister of Power was in Ibadan. We want to do the University of Ibadan plus the teaching hospital. So Lagos, University of Ibadan and teaching hospital, Obafemi Awolowo University, Nsukka University, Ahmadu Bello University.
We have a date in August. I was counting March, April, May, June, July, August. So we're going to tell our producer, you have to be here.
Absolutely.
So what we will do that day, we will play back all you said, and you give us,
and look at the numbers.
Us pictures and videos.
Absolutely.
All right, but Mr. Liu, just before you go, talk to us about pricing, because if those in the urban areas are, complaining about pricing being on band A, these are rural areas. What assurances are you giving us that price will be minimal, particularly because you're partnering with the private sector? In 30 seconds.
So the pricing, because we are de-risking, the government is committing resources to de-risk the sector, thereby reducing the cost of the infrastructure that the private sector is deploying. That means that the tariff would be low. Because
price per kilowatt in 5 seconds. What would be price per kilowatt?
So it depends on also the distribution network and the cost of the infrastructure. It differs, but it starts from 120 naira per kilowatt.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Abba Aliyu, Managing Director, Rural Electrification Agency, who has been with us here in our Lagos studio. Thank you so much for your time, and you have our best wishes. We'll be bringing you back.
Yes, in August.
In August,
yes.
to reflect and review the promises that you have made.
Exactly. Thank you so much for having me.
And from here, we'll take a break now. When we return, we'll bring you another interesting conversation. Stay with us. We'll be right back.